Hi, I've clicked on to today's tropical tidbit for Monday here in the Atlantic. Not a whole lot going on, but we are watching this area in the southwest Caribbean, which the models have been consistently showing developing into at least a broad area of low pressure that will be drifting northward and eventually causing issues and at least some rainfall for some islands up here in the northwest Caribbean that are going to need it, but an issue for development that we could possibly need to watch. We can see the subtropical jet stream is still streaming here very close by to the north of it, generally shearing it off. We are starting to get a little bit of a low pressure to try to form in here based on surface analysis this morning. If we take a closer look at this, we can see that it was convectively inactive all night. We have a new batch of convection developing over here. The mid-level cloud deck over here indicates that there's still a lot of upper divergence going on aloft over here, strong jet stream, but you see these outflow boundaries right here racing outward to the northwest, indicating the convection that died last night. And we've got a little bit of surface divergence going on now with strong trade winds coming out here, not necessarily as fast coming in. So this area died off last night. But down here you can see that the area of greatest surface convergence is right in here, and this is where the surface map has the new low forming. And you can kind of see the inflow starting to come into it, hinting at the low pressure. If you look really closely, you can see the trade winds bending slightly this way to the north of it, and you can see these winds curving slightly northwestward into it on this side. So there is a semblance of low pressure in here developing beneath this little blob of convection. It's not going to do a whole lot right now. Again, the wind shear is still very strong over this out of the west-southwest here, and this is going to remain this way for about the next 48 hours or so. Probably by Thursday is when we'll start to see this start to lift north. Remember, this trough over here, this upper trough currently east of Florida, is going to be backing west-southwest beneath the ridge that's over the southeastern United States. And as it does so, that's going to allow the jet stream to lift north and allow this upper ridge to balloon up over the central Caribbean, and that will lower the wind shear in this area and make the upper level environment more conducive for possible development. Now, the interesting thing about the situation is the models have been just about everywhere with this system. This is the European ensembles, day 8 over here from last night. You can see the ensemble member variance over here illustrated by the pink colors, showing that it's favoring development right here, showing low pressure. The ensemble mean has it northwest of Jamaica by day 8, and then it's over here by day 10, which I don't have on here. But it's been interesting to watch these models go back and forth. Yesterday we had a whole lot of runs where the majority of them actually developed this really strong. The Canadian had a hurricane in here, and then a lot of them tried to move it up into the Gulf and play around with Florida a little bit, and generally had a strong system, and it looked tight for development. But then last night and this morning's runs are showing it dragged off to the northeast, very diffuse, broad low in here that gets taken out here, and then generally dissipates with very little development at all. And these models are going to continue going back and forth. It appears that the track is the greatest issue regarding the intensity. This is last night's European look at the operational model at day 5, 120 hours. This is the 500 millibar pattern plus the surface pressure. You can see the broad low here south of Jamaica. But notice the upper level pattern. We've got the ridge over the southern U.S. Here's this trough coming off the eastern seaboard. Now, this doesn't look very close by in order to try to drag this northeast. We'd think it would need to be closer in there, especially when we have this pulling on it to the northwest. But notice the orientation of this ridge over the subtropical Atlantic. Notice it's sticking its nose in there. This ridge, remember, in the middle of the hurricane season is usually farther north and allows hurricanes to pass by to the south of it. Right now, early in the season, it's still pretty far down here, suppressing activity in the central Atlantic, but more importantly, the flow over here is actually to the east-northeast, which means that despite the trough being way up here, this trailing weakness is allowing the flow in the mid-levels, the mid-level steering, to be to the east-northeast, which means the model is seeing more of a pull this way than might be intuitive for a trough way up here. So what the models are doing is they're starting to drag this out, and what happens is when you have the subtropical jet screaming up in here, once it starts moving this way, the upper level divergence around and south of the jet starts elongating the area of low pressure. You can kind of see it starting here on the European with the trough extending to the northeast, and that spreads out the low, shears it, and generally doesn't allow for tropical development, and this will just phase in and weaken over here, and we won't get much out of it. That kind of situation would probably end up in this not even becoming a tropical depression. What they were showing before, though, and some of the models still are, only one this morning still shows that. That's the UK Met, which keeps it sitting down here for quite a while and allows it to fester and eventually drifts it northwest, following this upper low. This upper low would continue moving northwest or westward, and this would just follow it, and this would eventually drift northward. And as this pattern flattens out and the ridge in here weakens, you get a flatter pattern, and this would eventually find a weakness to move up into the Gulf of Mexico after 8 to 10 days or so. In the middle of next week. That's the two scenarios that we basically have right now. It's really hard to say which one is more likely. This is kind of one of those situations where the models are equally divided, going back and forth between every model cycle, not really hanging on to one. As a human, I don't have the mathematical abilities to know exactly how strong this trough is going to be and whether it's going to be just enough to bring it north, or how soon this ridge is going to weaken, or things like that, whether it's going to be able to trap the low down here. It's kind of one of those situations where you need to wait and see, let this develop down here if it does at all, get it up as a defined entity, and then evaluate the situation based on when this is starting to happen in the moment. Right now it's still a little bit too far off to draw a conclusion on, but that's its two possibilities. Either it's going to go out here and die and don't do anyone much good, or it'll sit down here for a while, come northwest, and hopefully bring some rain to the folks in here that really want it. Not looking to be too awful strong of a storm. It's still going to be, again, I'm going to keep using this phrase, like pulling teeth to get this to develop, typical of an early season storm. It's going to be hard to get this going, and it's going to take a while, so we're going to have to be patient and just continue to watch it closely. Alright, that's it for today. Thanks for watching.